All right, guys, welcome back. Today is Wednesday. We are going to be starting a new chapter today. So I'm going to need some paper out so you can take some notes today. We haven't had an actual lesson in a few days on these videos. So today you got to get back in the swing of taking notes from a lesson. So today we're doing section 24.1. And section 24.1 is on parallelograms. Okay, so you've done parallelograms before. In fact, my daughter's third grade class was working on very, very basic parallelograms. You have a little bit of an idea here, but there's things I'm sure you've forgotten, so I'm definitely going to show you those and push you in the right direction. So, what is a parallelogram? First off, it's a quadrilateral, and we know what a quadrilateral is. That's a four-sided shape. It's a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. Okay. Remember, you got to take these notes. So if you do not have paper out, you want to go ahead and push pause right now. Go grab some paper, and you can come back and pick up right here. So again, if you don't have it, push pause, and let's get things going again. Now, we might need to know about diagonals. We should know what a diagonal is. It's a segment that connects two non-adjacent vertices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this picture here. Usually you draw most parallelograms kind of looking something like this. Okay, to show that it's a parallelogram, it's a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. So go ahead and draw this picture on your paper. Okay, and that makes a parallelogram. Quadrilateral, two parallel sides. Now, as soon as you hear about parallel sides, parallel lines, you should be thinking about alternate interiors. You should be thinking about corresponding angles. You should think about consecutive interiors. So the alternate interior and alternate exterior and corresponding, those are all congruent, whereas consecutive interiors are going to be supplementary. So that's something that we're going to have to think about. Okay. Now you can draw a diagonal in from corner to corner, so this would be considered a diagonal. Let's put some labels here too. This is quadrilateral ABCD. I'm telling you it is a parallelogram based on the parallel side, so that's parallelogram ABCD. Okay. Now there's a theorem that comes up in this section that says that if you have a parallelogram, then the opposite sides are congruent. So we're going to write that down here now. In a parallelogram, we'll just put parallelograms, opposite sides are congruent. Okay, that's one of the theorems that goes with parallelograms. What they're saying there is if I tell you that this is a parallelogram, and I'm telling you that right now, that it is a parallelogram, A, B, C, D, not only are the opposite sides parallel, okay, that is true, but also the opposite sides are congruent. Now, they're not congruent, all four of them. That makes it a different shape, which we'll learn about when you come back. But the opposite side, so this side is congruent to that side, and this side is congruent to that side. Something that you've got to know, that the opposite sides are congruent, as pairs of those that way. All right, so let's look at an example of that that you might have to solve here in the homework. So draw a parallelogram. Okay, we kind of use this general parallelogram over and over and over. We'll call it parallelogram WXYZ. Okay, and I'll have this side as 3 and this side is A. And I'll have this side is 4C plus 7. And down here at the bottom we'll say 2y, or not y, sorry, 2c plus 23. Again, this is 2c here plus 23, not y. All right, so the opposite sides are going to be congruent. So this is going to be congruent to this, and this will be congruent to this because I've told you you have a parallelogram. So if that's the case, I can easily solve for A by just saying A equals 3. There's not even any work there. A is 3. If I want to find C, I'll say these two opposite sides are congruent, so I'll say 4C plus 7 equals 2c plus 23. Okay, and we'll solve that. So let's get the c's on the same side. Subtract over 2c. So you have 2c plus 7 equals 23. You'll want to subtract 7 from each side. Okay, so if we subtract 7 from each side, that gives us 2c equals 16. And then we'll finish by dividing each side by 2, and we'll have c equals 8. So again, opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So what would make that true is if a was 3 and c was 8. All right, now the next thing you need to know about parallelograms, this is the next theorem for us, is that in parallelograms, the opposite angles are congruent. Okay, this is something that we need to know, that for parallelograms, the opposite angles are congruent. So what we've got here is this. Again, draw another parallelogram. So you have it. Okay, we know it's a parallelogram because opposite sides are parallel. Okay, got to have that. And if you have that, the idea is that these opposite angles right here and here are congruent, and this angle up here is congruent to this angle down there. That is the key to parallelograms. Okay, that their opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so if I had A, B, C, D, I could say angle B is congruent to angle D, and I could say angle A is congruent to angle C. Okay, and that is true of parallelograms. Okay, now one final thing about parallelograms today is that the diagonals bisect each other. So diagonals bisect each other in a parallelogram. Okay, again, make sure you're taking the notes, you're writing stuff down. No cell phones or earphones, you know the drill. Okay, so the diagonals are going to bisect each other in a parallelogram. So the idea is that if I draw a parallelogram and I draw in diagonals, okay, the diagonals will bisect each other. So this will be congruent to this. This will be congruent to this. They won't be congruent to each other necessarily, but if the diagonals bisect, then we can mark it this way, all right? So again, opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, diagonals bisect each other, okay? I'm going to stop the video here. YouTube kind of makes me stop with about a 10-minute video. So I'm going to stop here. There's going to be a second video to watch again that's going to have a few extra examples and then a little bit of a wrap-up. So go ahead and take a short little break and then come back in just a couple of minutes to watch the second video. All right?